This week on Third Rate Content, we're going to be exploring Much Wenlock. Keep watching. So welcome back to Third Rate Content. Today we are in the south-easterly Shropshire town of Much Wenlock. We're going to have a walk around it, explore, see if we can unearth some history, and just have a really good explore and see what's going on here on this lovely late May day. Been a nice last couple of weeks, so we've been making the most of it. So anyway, buckle up and I'll see you out here. Much Wenlock grew up around the Priory and by the medieval period had become a place of some wealth and prosperity. This is obvious by the late medieval and Elizabethan buildings around the town. Edward IV granted Much Wenlock a charter in 1468, and after the priory was dissolved by Henry VIII, the burgesses built the Guildhall on High Street to hold a courtroom and later a council chamber, which is still here. We're just having a look at one of the old inns of Much Wenlock, and look at this shop frontage. Beautiful 19th century shop frontage, but obviously it's not in use today, but it's nice that the owners are using it to display. So the building behind me was the hospital of Much Wenlock a long time ago. It was founded in the 13th century, 1200s, and it was like an almshouse of the day. It was a hospital for beggars. Yeah, just across the road. Go out this on a bit. And then from the 15th century, it was expanded and became the residence of the Ashfield family. And also there was a stream that ran just somewhere around here, which we can't see now. I think it's been culverted. And that gave the place the name of the Blue Bridge. But in 1642, just around the time of the English Civil War, Charles I is thought to have stayed here on his way from Shrewsbury to Oxford. So it's quite the historic building. You've got these absolutely lovely little lanes just nestled away on the main street of Much Wenlock. Much Wenlock is historically the chief town of the ancient borough of Wenlock. A lot of refurbishment going on here. But the Much was added to distinguish it from the nearby Little Wenlock. And basically to show it is the larger of the two settlements. Yeah, the name Much Wenlock comes from the old Celtic word meaning, well, the word it was Winisias, meaning white area, in reference to the limestone that was mined in the area and still is to this day, I believe. But coupled with the Old English word loca, which means enclosed place. The town was recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086 as Wenlock. Of course, all this black tar paint was added, I believe, in the Victorian days. I suppose as to give it the nice white and black, but perhaps to protect the actual timbers. But then right across the road from the Talbot, you've got this wonderful old, basically town mansion by the look of it. And the building is known as Reynolds Mansion, and it's an old hall house with a 17th century frontage. The building is timber framed with plaster infill, and it has got 19th century storefronts. And this one did have the black paint on it, because this building was featured in A Gone to Earth, starring the Oscar winner Jennifer Jones. She did actually come out of the door just down here, and it was all black then, but it's now been returned to its original timber colour. So yeah, so this was the Corn Market and Agricultural Library, 1852. And just below it is this plaque to William Penny Brooks, the father of the modern Olympics. Yeah, fine Victorian building. Still in use today, but not as the Corn Market. This is brand new, King Charles III. Coronation 6th of May, 2023. Yeah, here, just besides, well, it's actually part of the George and Dragon, is the George Shot. So they actually call them shots here in Wenlock, just like Shrewsbury. Cycling is prohibited though. Well, we haven't brought my push bike today. Yeah, very historic pub. Holstery Inn. Yeah, we're just in the Much Wenlock Museum, and they've got this wonderful photo of the actual scene being shot back in 1949. Very nice. I don't know if you can see these for the glare, but these are lavabo panels, and they are in the Romanesque style of the late 10th century. The style that H.P. Lovecraft called the bungling Romanesque style, trying to be Roman basically. But I think that he was being a bit harsh there. And this was awarded by the National Olympian Society to William Penny once again. And then this was awarded by the Birmingham Athletic Club. Came to grief on the last lap. The other fellow chose to cross his path. The man was knocked down and severely bruised. Henson managed to remount his machine and finished third. And there are the, I think one of these is Henson. Yeah, you do get that sort of dynamic feel off these on the old penny farthings, having a real race, man to man, machine to machine. And Wenlock was the name of one of the mascots in the 2012 Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games held in the UK. I don't know if you remember those mascots. They were sort of fat. You don't need to remember them, because here is Wenlock. Kind of creepy, I always found them, that guy. But you know, that's mascots for you. And the 2012 Olympic Games had the creepiest opening ceremony I've ever seen. In fact, I don't really make a habit of watching them, but I've watched that one a few times because it's so weird and so creepy. It was noted here. Yeah, it is actually thought there was a sub-Roman Christian settlement that remained in Wenlock, obviously after the Romans had gone, and it maintained its Roman Christianity, after a lot of this populace of Britain had started reverting back to the old ways. I love old-time photos, because bearing in mind, this would have been one of the only times these people had photographs in their lifetime, probably half a dozen times. Yeah, and there is something about old-time faces. They have sort of different expressions than what I think people have today. Maybe that's just me. Comment if you disagree or agree. Yeah, and these are the trophies of Charles Ainsworth, the champion tilter at the Wenlock Olympic Games. Is that a discus, a tilter? I'm not even sure what a tilter is. It's not a current Olympic discipline. The Roll of Victors, the Wenlock Olympic Games. That's something. Wearing a smoking cap or a smoking berry. And that was also awarded to the champion tilter of the Wenlock Games. It just shows how times have changed. Champion Olympians would not be getting smoking caps or smoking paraphernalia as a prize for winning their discipline today, I don't think. Wow. Ceilings in here are very impressive. Yeah, a wall of old-time Olympians. That could be the guy, the tilting guy. Very similar medal. My mistake. This is Alfred William Oldfield, and he was Homer's heroic hedge vaulter. This is the same chap in slightly older. It's Bill Phillips, and he was a Wenlock Olympic champion, and he later moved to Much Wenlock and became its mayor in 1960. He liked it so much. This is Thomas Yates. He's actually dressed in Tudor garb because there was like a march at the start, procession at the start of the games, Wenlock Games, and that was the theme for that year, I guess. And here's a more recent Olympian, Alison Williams. She actually competed in Athens Olympic Games, Beijing, and London 2012, and she won a bronze medal at Athens in 2004. But she also competed in the Wenlock Olympic Games. Age 10, she won a silver medal. So yeah, she is a universal Olympian. So this wood plaque was carved to commemorate the 2012 Olympic Games. Of course, the torch did pass through Wenlock on the way, on the procession and on the way to lighting the 2012 Olympics up. These are fossils that have been uncovered nearby Wenlock Edge. We will do the Wenlock Edge separately, I think, hopefully this year. This is actually the Guild Hall of Much Wenlock, and it was built in 1557. The north end did have a stone prison. It doesn't now. This building here did another one that featured in Gone to Earth, the 1949 Hollywood and British collaboration. Just having a closer look at the north end of the Guildhall, you can see the stone section. That is where the prison would have been, the town prison. This was the house of Dr. William Pennybrooks. And just looking towards the Cook clock, erected by Mayor Cook to commemorate the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria on the 20th of June 1897. Hello. Hello. Gonna be on third-rate content. Yeah, another beautiful timber frame cottage here on Church Green. Yeah, we're just sitting in the churchyard of Much Wenlock Anglican Parish Church. We will go and have a look inside it in a bit. But first, we're just going to hear a really tragic story. Yeah, so on the 13th of April, 1546, a young girl of 11 years old was hanged here in Much Wenlock. She'd been accused of a crime. It's not exactly known what the crime was, but it's thought it could have been witchcraft, possibly. But yeah, she is the youngest ever girl to be executed in the British Isles, Unfortunately, there was a young lad of a couple of years younger who was executed for theft, I believe, about 100 years later. But poor Alice is the youngest girl. Yes, Alice was hanged, and also two men, which are not named, but one of them was thought to be the vicar of this very church. Yeah, Alice's resting place is thought to be in the churchyard somewhere here, although it was an unmarked plot, so we'll never know quite where it was. But if I did know, I'd leave some flowers for Alice, because it's a really sad story and it affected me a little bit, actually. Yeah, just here in the churchyard, we've walked around the front of these houses, but the backs of them are just as beautiful as the fronts. And what a place to come out of your back door to. This gorgeous churchyard. Plenty of plots left in here though, by the looks. Of course, Mary Webb, the author of Golden Arrow and A Gone to Earth, was born in Much Wenlock and spent her early years here. This is some ancient stonework. I don't know exactly what it is or what it's from, but it's old. Here under the yew tree. Not as old as the one we saw last week, I don't think, though, or the other week. Wow, ancient stone coffin. I don't know why it's not occupied now. Yeah, I just thought I'd have a bit of a lie in it. Yeah, the Holy Trinity Church, Wilmore Street, was built in 1150, and it was replacing the first church on this site, which was built in Anglo-Saxon times. Yeah, and this church was built by the Cluniac monks of Wenlock Priory. Saint Milburga's Saxon Abbey was a dual house with quarters for both monks and nuns. The monks' church was where the priory now stands, but the nuns' church was on the site of the now occupied by the 12th century Church of the Holy Trinity. Thomas Butler was the abbot of Much Wenlock when the Reformation came and the monasteries were dissolved, and he then became the parish priest of Much Wenlock Church, and he took the remains of Saint Milburga with him. Unfortunately, in 1547, they were taken and outrageously burned. The nave and the chancel in this church are primarily Norman. Very nice wood timber work here in the church. Wow, that is an ancient door. I don't know exactly when it dates from, but it is old. Wow, the Vicars of Wenlock, and this goes back to 1238. Hervey was the first prior and convent of Wenlock. It goes all the way down to 2016, Sarah Louise Hare. That continuity can't be beat. Pretty old font. It's said to be Norman. And on the 7th day, Third Rate Content delivers us our weekly content. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the second generation Rat Pack has got to do with Much Wenlock Church, but it's here anyway. Peter Lawford, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra. I'm not a fan of anything, I just know the first Rat Pack was led by Humphrey Bogart. Not a lot of people know that. I do. Just outside the church now, we're going to make our way, have a look at the priory hopefully. Savings Bank, 1829. Looks like you could just put 50p in the top. Yeah, you don't see cobblestones like this very often, but you know, down a absolutely picture perfect chocolate box English street. It almost looks Cotswoldian once again, Cotswoldian, but it's not. It's in South East Shropshire. On our way down to the Priory. Gorgeous leafy lanes abound. Much Wenlock. You're never that far from the countryside. It's a small town, like a really big village, but it is actually a small town, and it always has been. So I don't know what I'm talking about there, but it does remind me, Much Wenlock, of another similarly sized town in Somerset. It really does remind me of Castle Carey, if anyone's been there. I used to have an aunt who lived there, so I spent quite a lot of time there in my teenage years, and Much Wenlock very much reminds me, in both in size and feel, to that place in Somerset. And we're just on our way down to Wenlock Priory and on Shenton Street, and this is a medieval tower which was once part of the Priory and later used as a home for Wenlock National School from 1848 to 1952. And this area was once the town's of Much Wenlock sewer drainage. Yeah, I got that a bit wrong. The Priory is this way, down that idyllic lane I was just talking about. So let's go and have a look. Yeah, the brown cows, not sure the breed, having a bit of shade under the hawthorns, I think they're called. I don't blame them. This lane is just so gorgeous. It's just so quintessentially English countryside in spring, late spring. I absolutely love it. Two prize bulls off the market. Ooh. Country life. Oh, he's escaped. He's escaped.
Just stand in the middle of the road. Stand in the middle.
Christ.
Mind your
Pardon me
back.
language. Cow running. Cow's running into Much Wenlock. Oh no. He just said, the farmer just said, I hope they don't go to town. They're going in that direction. Let's see what happens next. Keep watching. Keep watching. They're going in exactly the wrong direction to the show though, the farm show. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be going 60 mile an hour up that lane. Originally on this site there's been a religious house since 687, since the 7th century, when King Penda of Mercia, who were the bosses of that day in the sort of 600s, 7th century, sort of the days of King Arthur, roughly. He was one of the bosses of Mercia, and he sort of installed his son here, but then his daughter in 687, Milburga, as the abbess of the original holy house that was here, preceding this one. That lasted until the 800s, when a group of Vikings, Danish Vikings, roaming inland, and it just shows you how far they roamed inland using riverways and waterways, inland waterways such as the River Severn, attacked it and destroyed it. Obviously they were pagans, and they were Christians here, so they put it to the sword and to flame. Fragments of mosaic tiles. It's a little bit like what we saw at Florida Abbey, but less complete. Ah, graffiti, 1831. But I bet when the people carved this in, if it was unauthorised, you had all the people going, oh, I hate graffiti, I hate graffiti. But now, the same people will be going, oh, historic graffiti, how fine, which it is. It's just the double standards. I can't stand double standards, particularly. Although I would not like to see this wall daubed in spray paint, obviously. But it's just the hypocrisy and the shrill squeaks of the normies. And some of them are YouTubers. Lol. Ah, more graffiti. Oh, it's historic, it's all right. Because I do find historical graffiti extremely interesting. Although they were quite naughty people who did it originally. It's just like a Shrewsbury Boys School, now Shrewsbury Library. They were bad boys who did them carvings, but now you couldn't live without them really at Shrewsbury Library. So it's a heck of a feature. Yeah. I don't know if these have been jumbled up, you know, and sort of restored, or jumbled up during restoration, or it's just worn away. I'm not really sure. I would not like to see spray paint graffiti daubed on these walls. So please don't get me wrong. I'm being the devil's advocate and then standing up against hypocrisy as I see it. Just don't get too wound up. I'm just being just like third-rate content, really. Here you can see here, these would have all been pillars, sort of making the roof here, so you can imagine it all filled in above us here, and no grass. Yeah, I do wonder sometimes, how does the grass come back in places like this? Do they re-turf it, or is it just the flooring was ripped up and reused after the Reformation, and then the grass just came up naturally, or what? I'm never sure when I visit these places, old castles and monasteries. So if you do know, chip in the comments. Thank you. So, you know, walkways going along the perimeters. But here in the middle is what was known as the lavabo. It wasn't a lavatory, but it was a water fitting, a water installation, where the monks would have come and washed before prayers and eating. The carving here is a reproduction of what would have been here back in the heyday of the abbey. Yeah, just retracing the steps of the monks as they would have cleansed themselves prior to, as I said, meal times and prayer. Water would have been either side, and probably you'd have had a monk either side. But this is all part of the ritual of the abbey. Not just the actual act of cleaning, it's the metaphysical act of cleaning and cleansing. Yeah, they look ancient. At least from the 1100s. So where we are now would have been the cloister of the abbey, which was like a large rectangle open space which would have been covered on its perimeters. Geese, guard geese. Yeah, we were just talking about Saint Milburga. And this is a 13th century seal from the prior of Wenlock Abbey. Literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years after the times of Saint Milburga. Because her life, Saint Milburga's life, all the wonderful deeds she did, apparently, she healed the blind, healed the lame, healed the blind, let the blind saw, and did all kinds of other miraculous miracles. But the actual story of Saint Milburga was actually written down in the 1100s by a French monk, and it was an idealized form of her life, kind of like a fictional account of, say, someone from the English Civil War, or perhaps the Napoleonic times, but then hyped up. Saint Milburga was canonized due to various saintly deeds. A river changed, the River Corve, to stop a lustful pursuer after her. A little bit like Saint Winifred. She had her troubles with would-be suitors. Also, Saint Winifred, when she passed by fields that were being planted with barley, the fields would have been ready to harvest later that evening. So the seeds were sowed in February and they were ready to harvest in February, which is a very miraculous thing. And she was also the enemy of geese. Geese were known to attack the seeds of crops that had been sown. So she banished them from any lands that she was associated with. Saint Milburga passed away in 715, and it was unknown the site of her grave because after the invading Vikings that we mentioned earlier ruined the abbey, her grave site was unknown. And it wasn't till hundreds of years later, in 1079, when some boys were playing, as boys do, and they fell into a miracle by falling through a tomb, and the sweet smell of balsam was identified as Milburga's resting place. So then the abbey could bring these out, and they could be holy relics, and the people could make pilgrimages to the Abbey of Much Wenlock for hundreds of years, all the way up till the Reformation. And it was a great money-making opportunity for the abbey as well to have these holy relics. And I'm not saying it was suspicious how the boys found them. They might well have found them legitimately. Yeah, behind this chicken wire is what would have been the abbey's library. See the mosaic tiles as well, but there would have been bookshelves around here. And the abbey had several hundred books. Doesn't sound that much by today's standards. I mean, you go in your average Oxfam shop, all Waterstones, and there's thousands in there. But I guess in the 1100s, 1200s, that was a huge amount of information. And again, books were virtually useless to most people because 90% of the population was illiterate. The relics of Saint Milburga went missing in the end because they say most probably they were targeted after the Henry VIII inspired Reformation, where all the abbeys of England were basically sacked, shut down, and had their wealth liquidated into the crown. So that was that end of Catholicism in England, but also the end of the abbeys and all the history that they held and, you know, archived. Yeah, we're in the eastern section of the abbey, the most holy part of the church, the abbey's church. The eastern section obviously being nearest the Son's birth, the Son of God, but also the Son of the universe. Good of the Christians to keep the old sun worship going, really, just hidden. Well done, guys. And I'm actually paraphrasing there the words of the great writer of the esoteric and occult, Manly P. Hall. So this fine building would have been the abbey's hospital, infirmary and lodging house. And the lodging house was as good as any manor house of its day in the 15th century. Elderly and sick monks would have been tended for in here, not the general population of Wenlock. But this house was sold on in the late 19th century or early 20th century to the Gaskell family. You know, quite a well-to-do family. Obviously they were to buy this, but they had some well-known guests over the years. One of them being the author Thomas Hardy. I have actually read a Thomas Hardy book. I can't remember what it's called though. It's the one about the guy, farm worker. Jude the Obscure. That's the one. Who wants to go to Oxford University, sort of break out of his class. Or it's Jed or something. It was quite a good book actually. Only read it about 5 years ago. Stayed with me. But yeah, he actually stayed here. Wow, that is detail and detail. So that is it for our visit to Much Wenlock and Wenlock Priory here in late May 2023. Thanks for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed, but you probably enjoyed somewhat if you're still here all the way to the end, and thank you for that. And if you did enjoy anyway, please leave a like if you feel like it, and also do subscribe, because it really does help the channel. And if you'd like to do that, I'd be very, very grateful. Thank you. And also do hit the notification bell if you want to keep up to date with third-rate content. Share and do leave a comment, because I love a good comment and I read them all and I respond where applicable. So if I don't see you soon, I'll see you 3 times as soon. Third-rate content sign out. Bye bye.